had a good understanding of the story, but really looking at it and studying this story, it foretells a lot. And it is very good and it's very in depth. Um, and Again, we're going to go over the last 4 verses of last week, which is chapter 5 through 8. And then we're going to prep and read for next week. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and read um, verses 5 through 8. Okay. In the New Living Translation. All right. And it says, but he did not accept Cain and his gift. And this made Cain very angry, and he looked dejected. Why are you so angry? Yahuwah asked Cain. Why do you look dejected? You will be accepted if you do what is right. But if you refuse to do what is right, then watch out. Sin is crouching at the door, eager to control you, but you must subdue it and be its master. Verse 8, one day Cain suggested to his brother, let's go out into the field. And while they were out in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. All right. Going to 5. All right. Just touching up real quick. So again, we knew that as we was looking at the beginning of the story of Cain and Abel, Adam and Eve had Cain first. He was the firstborn son. Then they had Abel. Okay. They said that they grew up. They got older. Okay. Cain was a tiller of the ground. Okay, and Abel was a shepherd. Okay. We came to the conclusion. All right. Last week we came to the conclusion that they were offering the first fruits. Okay, they was holding the first fruit feast. Okay, and we saw that in verse 3. It said, when it was time for the festival, Cain presented some of his crops as a gift to Yahuwah, and Abel also brought a gift of the best portion, firstborn lamb from his flock. All right. So they're giving their portion, okay, to Yahuwah as a sacrifice. Okay. All right. So again, we recognize that this is the first fruits, the feast of first fruits. All right. So that's very important. We talked about a question that I had y'all to think on. Okay, and we will get to it next week. And that question was, what is the symbolism of the first fruits? And we're going to kind of read some of the things that kind of touch on that. Okay. And it was an important question where, at the end of last week, Brother, you asked about, well, if we don't have these things now, how can we do, this now, and it's gonna kind of touch on some of that today. Okay, so I'm gonna go through these first 4 verses, and then I'm gonna read some side things, okay, that I was gonna read anyway today. Okay, all right. King James Version, verse 5, and it says, unto Cain and to his offering he had not accepted, and Cain was very wroth, and his countenance fell. All right. I'm going to go through a lot of these. I'm going to go through a lot of these references, okay, because it is very important. They explain everything as they go. And as we go through this, this week and next week. These verses, all of these verses are very important. Okay. So again, why was Abel's offering better than Cain's? Anybody remember that from last week? Because he gave his best. Okay. And we saw that, I believe, in verse 4, saying that he gave the firstling, okay, the best portion of the firstborn lamb. Okay. So he gave his best. All right. So here in King James, it says, but unto Cain and to his offering he had not respected. Okay, we're going to go to Hebrews 11:4. Okay, it was by faith that Abel brought a more acceptable offering to Elohim than Cain did. Abel's offering gave evidence that he was a righteous man, and Elohim showed his approval of his gift. Although Abel is long dead, he still speaks to us by his example of faith. Okay, what was his example of faith? It was giving his best, giving the best of what he had, the firstbornling, okay? Saying that Yah asked for this, so my faith is I'm going to do what he asked for, even though this is my best. I could use this. So he was being obedient. I gave my best. You can say that. So he gave his best. The part of the verse that says, but unto Cain and to his offering, he had not respect. Okay. The other one, that would have been due to they're doing wrong. Yep. So, yep. So to their doing wrong. So, with that being said, again, we didn't get to why Cain's offering wasn't accepted. All right. But before that, it says, well, actually, we get to it now. And it says, what did Cain refuse to do? Okay. If we go forward and look at verse 7, okay, Genesis 4:7. All right. Just 2 verses down. He said it right there. He said, you will be accepted if you do what is right. So obviously, he didn't give his best. We're talking about offering, right? He said, you will be accepted if you do what is right. Okay? So he refused, very next sentence, but you refuse to do what is right. I'm sorry. Thank you. All right. So obviously, we know that Cain did not give his best in his offering. Okay, so we're talking about offerings. All right. All right. So in this verse, we're going to look at the word wrath. Okay, real quick. The word wrath is H2734. All right. Hara. All right. And it says to glow, to grow warm, figuratively, usually to blaze up, okay, of anger, zeal, jealousy, okay, be angry, burn, okay, be displeased, earnestly, fret self, grieve, be waxed hot, be incensed, kindled, very wroth, okay. All right, so Abel gave his best. Cain did not, because he chose not to give his best. So he was angry and jealous that his offering wasn't accepted. He was jealous over his brother, okay, Abel. All right, I'm going to read references to being jealous or angry. Okay, Genesis 31:5. It says, he said to them, I have noticed that your father's attitude towards me was changed, but Elohim of my father has been with me. Okay, so that's talking about Laban. Okay, Jacob and Laban. All right, Laban wasn't happy when Jacob was trying to leave. All right, we're going to go to Isaiah 3:10-11. And it says, Tell the godly that all will be well for them. They will enjoy the rich reward they have earned. But the wicked are doomed, for they will get exactly what they deserve. Okay? Choosing to do what is wrong. Choosing to do what, not to do what Yahuwah expects of you. Okay? We're going to go to Matthew 20:15. And it says, is it against the law for me to do what I want with my money? This is Yahusha speaking. Okay. Should you be jealous because I am kind to others? Okay. It was Matthew 20:15. Okay. Again, reflecting on Abel doing what was right. Okay. And Cain being jealous of Abel because he did what was right and he was doing what was wrong. Okay. We're going to go to Luke 15:28-30. Still on the references of being wroth, being angry, being jealous. The prodigal son, it says, the older brother was angry and wouldn't go in. His father came out and begged him, but he replied, all these years I have slaved for you and never once refused to do a single thing you told me to. And in all that time, you never gave me even one young goat for a feast with my friends. Yet, when this son of yours comes back from squandering your money on prostitutes, you celebrate by killing the fattened calf. Okay? So, really showing the jealousy, okay? All right, of the brother. Okay, later on it's going to be a verse to finish that thought. Okay, and last one, referring to wrath and jealousy, we're going to Acts 13:45. Acts chapter 13 verse 45, and it says, but when some of the Jews saw the crowds, they were jealous. So they slandered Paul and argued against whatever he said. Okay. All right. So again, they're showing the jealousy. And typically when jealousy is in the building, things are going to follow. All right. Here, they slandered him. So they were false witnesses. Okay. All right. We're going to go to verse 6, King James Version. King James Version. All right. All right. Genesis 4:6. And it says, and Yahuwah said unto Cain, why art thou wroth? Okay. And why is thy countenance fallen? Okay. So why is he angry? Kind of went over this just a second ago. Jealousy. Okay. His countenance fell because of jealousy. And where did the jealousy come from? Him choosing to do what was wrong. Him choosing. Yep. Every time. Okay, so we're going to reference We're going to read a few references on this. Okay. We're going to go to First Chronicles 13, 11 through 13. All right. And remember, it's because of doing what is wrong, even if it's an accident at times. Okay. There's always a consequence. Okay. There's always a consequence. All right. First Chronicles 13, 11 through 13. Even if it's an accident. Okay. And it says, David was angry because Yahuwah's anger had burst out against Uzzah. He named the place Peraz Uzzah, which means to burst out against Uzzah, as it is still called today. David was now afraid of Elohim, and he asked, how can I ever bring the ark of Elohim back to my care? So David did not move the ark into the city of David. Instead, he took it to the house of Obed Edom in Gath. So why was he afraid? What happened? Uzzah got struck down. Why did he get struck down? He touched the ark. Even though he went to save the ark from falling, consequences is consequences. That's crazy. All right.
Well, especially since,
Yeah.
It was King David who set this up for it to go on an ox cart instead of doing it the way that it was instructed. So Uzzah was just following orders.
100%. No, 100%. So just like the man, so just like the man has to deal with the consequences or have to lead, okay? The king and his people. So David suffered because Uzzah died. Because of his not doing right. Okay? So David suffered. It was because of David. All right? So that's where, again, the anger.
Did we read this one?
We did read this. Yeah, we did.
That part I like was he went back and got it because he blessed.
He saw that. Even no, we didn't actually go deep into it, but let me go get that. Yeah, right.
Did you say that? Or did I hear that somewhere?
You probably heard it somewhere. We didn't speak deeper into that.
But
Yeah.
he was like, no, I'm gonna go back and get it.
Let me get. Yeah.
Bless all the cards.
Yep.
Amen now.
All right, we're going to Job 5 and 2. Job 5 and 2. And it says, surely resentment destroys the fool, and jealousy kills the simple. Okay? Resentment. That is 5 and 2. Job 5 and 2. Okay, so he's explaining all these situations that we go through in our life, and we think some things are not that big of a deal. But he says, surely resentment destroys the fool, and jealousy kills the simple. Okay, so that's big. That's huge. But we think it's just okay. Sometimes they have resentment. We got to let go, repent, forgive. Forgive is huge. Forgiving people is huge. Okay? That is a sin. If you don't, what he say? He said, if you can't forgive your enemies, then he's not going to forgive you. That's big. Okay? All right, Isaiah 1 and 18. And it says, come now, let's settle this, says Yahuwah. Though your sins are like scarlet, I will make them as white as snow. Though they are red like crimson, I will make them as white as wool. So he's begging his people, Repent. Come out. Come now. Let's settle this. Because how you feeling is going to be the road to your destruction. Okay? So he's begging his people. Okay? All right, we're going to go to Jeremiah 2 and 5. This is all about doing wrong. Okay? Having jealousy and anger in your heart. Okay? All right, and it says, this is what Yahuwah says. What did your ancestors find wrong with me that led them to stray so far from me? They worshiped worthless idols only to become worthless themselves. Okay? So they shouldn't be worshiping idols. And lo and behold, this week I looked up what idols is, and we know what idols are, but it goes in deeper to what idols actually are. And next week I am going to go into it, but if you go into it this week, on your own, it will tell you exactly what idols are. And we know this, we kind of went over this, talking about principalities and things of that nature. So along that line, we think of only statues, okay, which those idols use those statues, okay, but it tells us exactly what idols are. All right. So they are doing things that they shouldn't be. All right. I'm going to read a few more of these. And it says, I'm going to Jeremiah 2 and 31. Again, he's begging. Oh, my people, listen to the words of Yahuwah. Have I been like a desert to Israel or Yasharal? Have I been to them a land of darkness? Why then do my people say, at last we are free from Elohim? We don't need him anymore. Okay? So when you choose to do what's wrong, okay, what a lot of people don't get, especially in this stint, okay, is one, the people chose to do what's wrong, okay, because of one, other nations, okay, two, because when they feel as if they get blessed by other idols and things of that nature, they what's the saying for Satanists? Do as thou wilt. They don't have to follow the law. They feel like they don't have to follow. You make your own decisions. So to them, they feel like they get what they want. Okay? They feel as if they get what they want, which is in turn doing bad, and then they get condemned. Okay? Only because they don't want to follow the law. Okay? Follow Yahuwah. All right? All right, here we go. John 4, 1 through 4. Okay? And it says, Yahusha knew the Pharisees had heard that he was baptizing and making more disciples than John. Though Yahusha himself did not baptize them, his disciples did. So he left Judea and returned to Galilee. Okay? He had to go through Samaria on the way. All right? So what is this saying? Okay? The Pharisees were jealous and mad. Okay? Because he was making more disciples, and they're afraid that their power over the people is diminishing. All right? So they do things because of their sin. They do things towards Yahusha and the rest of the people out of that anger and jealousy. John 4:8-11. He was alone at the time because his disciples had gone into the village to buy some food. The woman was surprised. The Jews refused to have anything to do with Samaritans. She said to Yahusha, "You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. Why are you asking me for a drink?" Yahusha replied, "If you only knew the gift Elohim has for you and who you are speaking to, you would ask me, and I would give you living water. But, sir, you don't have a rope or a bucket," she said, "and this well is very deep. Where would you get this living water?" Okay. So the anger or frustration of the woman, okay, she said, "Y'all don't speak to us. Why are you speaking to us?" Okay. The anger and frustration. First, because of her living situation. She was living in sin. Okay. And at that point, Yahusha called it out. Said, "No, you don't have a husband. You have five." She's like, "Oh, you got me." Okay. All right. So she refused to do what was right. Okay. So this is showing that anger in that reply that she said, "Y'all don't talk to us. Why are you talking to me?" Okay. All right. Micah 6, verse 3-5. And it says, "O my people, what have I done to you? What have I done to make you tired of me? Answer me. I brought you out of Egypt and redeemed you from slavery. I sent Moses, Aaron, and Miriam to help you. Don't you remember, my people, how King Balak of Moab tried to have you cursed, and how Balaam, son of Beor, blessed you instead? And remember your journey from Ecclesia Grove to Gilgad, when I, Yahuwah, did everything I could to teach you about my faithfulness." Okay? So he said, "Remember the things that I did. You obviously don't deserve. Remember what I did for you. But because you were in sin, all right, we tend to forget, or we tend to hide from him." I'm going to go to that last one, Luke 15:31-32. And it says, this is finishing that prodigal son that I said they was going to talk about. And it says, "His father said to him, 'Look, dear son, you have always stayed by me, and everything I have is yours. So why are you angry?'" Okay? "We had to celebrate this happy day, for your brother was dead and has come back to life. He was lost, but now he is found." So the son that left and squandered the money, his dad chalked him up as being lost and dead. But he came back. He said, now he was lost, now he's found. Okay? But the brother is so wrapped up in, well, he gets a party and this and that. It's like, no, everything that I have as the father, everything I have is yours. So why are you upset? You're getting all of it. Okay? But through anger, it makes us blind of what the gift Yahuwah, the Father, will have for us. And we'll lose it. All right. All right. Genesis 4, verse 7, King James. And it says, "If thou doest well, shall thou not be accepted? And if thou doest not well, sin unto thee shall be his desire." Okay. "And thou shalt rule over him." All right. So again, we talked about this last week. We heard that before, okay? When Eve sinned and not listened to her husband, he said, "Well, Your desire, okay, to rule over your husband is going to be given to your husband. He's going to rule over you. Okay. And it says, we're going to look at the reference, doest well reference. Okay. If you do as well. And it says Proverbs 18:5. And it says, it is not right to acquit the guilty or deny justice to the innocent. Okay. It is not right to acquit the guilty or deny justice to the innocent. Okay. Saying that judgment is you're going to get the right judgment. If you're guilty, you're going to get the guilty judgment. If you're innocent, you're going to get the innocent judgment. Okay. They're both rewards. What you do, you're going to get a reward for it, whether it's good or bad. Okay. All right. Ecclesiastes 8:12-13. And it says, but even though a person sins 100 times and still lives a long life or a long time, I know that those who fear Elohim will be better off. The wicked will not prosper, no matter what you think, no matter how long they live, for they do not fear Elohim. Their days will never grow long like the evening shadows. Okay, like we said last week when I read this, again, they're talking about long life. Okay, he said, if a person sins 100 times but live a long life, okay, it's better off for the person who fear Yahuwah. Okay, all right, and he's talking about long life, and then at verse 13, he's talking about the wicked will never prosper. They will their days will never grow long like the evening shadow. Okay, he's talking about afterlife. When they die, their life will not be long, okay? Because into the promised land, okay? All right. There will be 1,000-year reign. Whoever makes it there will live a long life. So this life we live in here is but a breath, okay? But a vapor, okay? So the wicked is going to get what they're going to get, regardless if they live a long life. Sometimes we have that question. That's one of the biggest questions. Well, why people that, do evil things live a long time? Hey, this ain't nothing but a second. And when we on the other side, we're going to wish we did right for this second. All right, Isaiah chapter 3, verse 10 and 11. And it says, tell the godly that all will be well for them. They will enjoy the rich reward they have earned. But the wicked are doomed. They will get exactly what they deserve. All right. Jeremiah 6, verse 20. And it says, there is no use offering me sweet frankincense from Sheba. Keep your fragrant calamus imported from distant lands. I will not accept your burnt offerings. Your sacrifices have no pleasing aroma for me. Okay, and again, a lot of people, when they read these, they thinking, well, he didn't want sacrifices. No, he wanted sacrifices, but he wanted the right sacrifice. Okay, he wanted to be your best. Okay, all right, and I think it will come to kind of tell you what kind of offerings they were giving or sacrifices they were giving. All right, here in a few verses down. Okay, he wanted obedience. He asked for a certain offering. Okay. All right. Malachi 1 and 13. You say, it's too hard to serve YAHUAH. You turn up your nose at my commandments, says Elohim or YAHUAH of heaven's armies. Think of it. Animals that are stolen and crippled and sick are being presented as offerings. Should I accept from you such offerings as these? Asks Yahuwah. So they're giving blemished offerings. Not only are they sinning, but they're giving blemished offerings. They're not giving their best. Okay? So this is a reflection of probably what Cain did. It was what Cain did because it wasn't his first harvest of his fruits. Okay? It was not his first harvest of his fruits. So that goes deep. All right. And he says, we're going to work on that second. He says that second part of the first sentence in verse 7, the second part of the first sentence, it says, shall thou not be accepted? Okay. Shall thou not be accepted? All right. I said, if you do what's right, won't you be accepted? All right. Job 29, verse 4. He says, when I was in my prime, Elohim's friendship was felt in my home. When he was doing what was right, he says, Elohim friendship. He said, friendship was felt in my home. Job 29 and 4. He said, friendship. All right, Proverbs 21 and 27. Proverbs 21, verse 27. And it says, the sacrifice of an evil person is detestable, especially when it is offered with wrong motives. Okay? A sacrifice of an evil person is detestable. He ain't even looking. He ain't blink. Especially when it is offered with wrong motives. Okay? I mean, he said, won't you be accepted? You'll be accepted if you do what's right. Last one, reference of if you do what's right, you'll be accepted, is Hebrews 11 and 4. Nope, we read this one. Okay, Hebrews 11 and 4. This is the one about Abel. Okay, bring the more acceptable offering because of his faith. All right, back at verse Genesis 4, verse 7. We're looking at the section where it says, if thou doest not well. Okay, it says, sin. We're looking at sin lieth at the door. Okay, referencing sin here. If you don't do what's right, sin is waiting for you to do what's wrong. Okay, and what happened? What did he say at the very end of this chapter or this verse? If you choose to do what's wrong, it's going to rule over you. Okay, so we're looking at sin. Okay, we're going to go to Romans 7, verse 8 through 9. Romans 7, verse 8 through 9. But sin used this commandment to arouse all kinds of covetous desires within me. If there were no law, sin would not have that power. At one time I lived without understanding the law. But when I learned the command not to covet, for instance, the power of sin came to life. Okay? So that's saying that sin will rule over us. We are in the flesh Okay, and if we let it, it will rule over us. Okay, just like I say, don't think about tater nut donuts. We immediately want to think about tater nut donuts, right? That's just how it is. All right. So sin, that's how sin acts upon us. Okay. We're going to go to James 1 and 15. James chapter 1, verse 15. All right. And it says, these desires give birth to sinful action. Okay. These desires give birth to sinful actions. And when sin is allowed to grow, it gives birth to death. Okay. So again, sin begets sin. All right. It says these desires give birth to sinful actions. It always starts with a desire or an emotion. Okay. Jealousy, anger. Okay. Um, Shamefulness. Okay. As small as we think it is dangerous to us. We got to let things go. Okay. Because it gives birth to death. All right, and the very last part, okay, we're talking about the ruling part actually this time, and it says very last part of verse 7, it says, and thou shalt rule over him. Okay, talking about sin. All right, the reference we just finished was actual sin. All right, and how it works. All right, and we're going to go to Genesis. And we already know this one, Genesis 3 and 16. Okay. And it says, then he said to the woman, I will sharpen your pain and your pregnancy, and in pain you will give birth, and you will desire to control your husband, but he will rule over you. Okay. So sin, when we commit sin, is going to rule over us. Okay. No matter how small it is. Okay. No matter how small it is. Okay. All right. Verse 8. Verse 8. All right. The last verse of the night, and then we're going to go into a few other things and call it a night. Verse 8, King James Version. It says, and Cain talked with Abel, his brother, and it came to pass when they were in the field that Cain rose up against Abel, his brother, and slew him. Okay. Cain rose up and slew him. All right, we're going to look at these references. All right. Um, we went over these, which are good to hear. When we do what's wrong, again, sin begets sin. Okay, so we try to cover up things. Okay, all right. We and covering up things, whether it's trying to hide it or trying to be deceitful. All right. So 2 Samuel 3 and 27. And it says, when Abner arrived back at Hebron, Joab took him aside at the gateway as if to speak with him privately. But then he stabbed Abner in the stomach and killed him in revenge for killing his brother. Okay. Asahel. I'm going to go through these pretty quick. 2 Samuel 13, 26, 26 through 28. Well then, Absalom said, if you can't come, how about sending my brother Amnon with us? Why Amnon? The king asked. But Absalom kept on pressing the king until he finally agreed to let all his sons attend, including Amnon. So Absalom prepared a feast fit for a king. Absalom told his men, wait until Amnon gets drunk. Then, at my signal, kill him. Don't be afraid. I am the one who has given the commandment. Take courage and do it. All right. So, Again, through giving somebody a feast, which was a grand gesture, all right, and then wait until they get drunk and then having them killed. All right, sin will rule over you. All right, 2 Samuel 20, verse 9 through 10. And it says, "How are you, my cousin?" Joab said, and took him by the beard with his right hand as though to kiss him. Amasa didn't notice the dagger in his left hand, and Joab stabbed him in the stomach with it so that his insides gushed out unto the ground. Joab did not need to strike again. Amasa soon died. Joab and his brother Abishai left him lying there and continued after Sheba. Okay, in deceit, once again. All right, when we do something wrong, okay, we do things in deceit. Nehemiah 6 and 2. So Sanballat and Geshem sent a message asking me to meet them at one of the villages in the plains of Anna. But I realized they were plotting to harm me. So he peeped the game. He said, y'all ain't gonna get me. But they was trying to be deceitful. All right. Psalms 36 and 3. Everything they say is crooked. All right. The people who fall into sin, everything they say is crooked and deceitful. Okay. They refuse to act wisely or do good. So once we fall into sin, okay, we get crooked and deceitful. We have to be crooked and deceitful. Okay. Because we're ashamed. And not only we're ashamed, we're jealous and we want what the other people have. Okay. Psalms 55:21. His words are as smooth as butter, but in his heart is war. His words are as smoothing as lotion, but underneath are daggers. All right. Deceitful. All right. Proverbs 26:24 through 26. I like this one. And it says, people may cover their hatred with pleasant words, but they're deceiving you. They pretend to be kind, but don't believe them. Their hearts are full of many evils. While their hatred may be concealed by trickery, their wrongdoing will be exposed in public. It will come out. Okay. That was Proverbs 26. Yep, 24 through 26.
Because when you said this is my favorite or something,
Oh.
Okay. It's better to live in the corner of a roof than in a house shared with
Oh.
contentious
Ha 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 ha.
Like, all right. Go ahead, Austin.
All right. Micah 7 and 6. I'm outnumbered here. All right, Micah 7, verse 6. For the son despises his father, the daughter defiles her mother. The daughter-in-law defiles her mother-in-law. Your enemies are right in your own household. Okay? Again, Cain and Abel. Last one of this, Luke chapter 22, verse 48. And it says, but Yahusha said, Judas, would you betray the Son of Man with a kiss? All right. So he committed that sin. Okay. And he's coming in deceit. I can't remember exactly what he said. Did he say rabbi and came in with a kiss before he had him arrested? All right. And we're looking at the very end of this verse where it says that that Cain rose up against Abel, his brother, and slew him. Okay, Cain rose up. Okay. All right. Solomon, second Samuel, I'm sorry, second Samuel 14 and 6. All right, and then it says, my two sons had a fight out in the field, and since no one was there to stop it, one of them was killed. Okay, one of them rose up against the other. All right, out of the domino effect. Okay, all right, and then it says Job 11 and 15. It says, then your face will brighten with innocence. You will be strong and free of fear. Okay. Um, this one I can't remember. I can't speak on this one. I can't remember exactly what's going on in this one. I can't remember quite exactly who was on with this one. All right. So we're going to go to Psalms 24, 3 through 6. And it says, who may climb the mountain of Yahuwah? Who may stand in his Kadash place or holy place? Only those whose hand and hearts are pure, who do not worship idols and never tell lies. They will receive Yahuwah's blessings and have a right relationship with Elohim, their Savior. Such people may seek you and worship in your presence, O Elohim of Jacob. You will rise up, okay, if you do what's right, okay? Do what's wrong. This is actually just speaking on the opposite side of rising up. We're going to go to Psalms 139, verse 19. 139, verse 19. And it says, O Elohim, if only you would destroy the wicked. Get out of my life, you murderers. Okay. So again, small things lead to murder. They said if you hate somebody, that is the spirit. You are a murderer, right? Ain't that what that scripture says pretty much? All right, this is the one. All right. 1 John 3, 12 through 15. And it says, we must not be like Cain, who belongs to the evil one and killed his brother. Okay, he belonged to the evil one who killed his brother. And why did he kill him? Because Cain had been doing what was evil, and his brother had been doing what was righteous. So don't be surprised, dear brothers and sisters, if the world hates you. If we love our brothers and sisters who are believers, okay, who are believers, it proves that we have passed from death to life, okay, from death to life. But a person who has no love is still dead. Anyone who hates another brother or sister is really a murderer at heart. And you know that murderers don't have eternal life within them. That's a mouthful there. Last one, Jude 1 and 11. Jude chapter 1, verse 11. And it says, what sorrow awaits them, for they follow in the footsteps of Cain, who killed his brother. Like Balaam, they deceive people for money, and like Korah, they perish in their rebellion. All right, so this is telling when we choose to do what's wrong, okay? We choose to do what's wrong, and I'm going to go into this here. It's giving you scenarios, okay? When we choose to do what's wrong, it says Cain, who killed his brother, okay? All right, murder. When we choose to do what's wrong, murder. Like Balaam, they deceive people for money. That's the second instance. And then, like Korah, they perish in their rebellion. So when we choose to do what's wrong, those three things is going to happen. One of those three things is going to happen. And again, we choose to do what's wrong, then evil is going to rule over us. So these things, no matter if it's one or the other, is just as bad as the other. Whether it's murder, whether it's deceiving, okay, for money, deceiving just in general, or whether it's rebellion, okay. All right. Reading this first half, because I broke it up. This is originally how I wanted to break it up. The closing thoughts for verses 1 through 8, okay? I said, this shows that it is truly impossible to love your neighbors if we don't love Yahuwah. And that's through doing what's right or what he asks of us. So it is impossible for us to love our neighbors, because if we choose to do what's wrong or do what's not right, okay, with Yahuwah, okay, then sin is crouching at the door and sin will rule over us. So therefore, rebellion, deceitfulness, and murder will be there. One of those three. Okay. Now, it's important. Okay, I'm gonna read those passages that I told you that I was gonna read. When I put this on YouTube, the first half of this, I named this Cain and Abel. All right, the sins of the family, first fruits, and atonements. Okay, and the atonement. Okay, now Cain and Abel, the sins of the family, first fruits, and the atonement. Okay, so I want to go back and read first fruits for us, and then we're going to go into the New Testament and read some parables that I talked upon last week. All right. We're going to Leviticus chapter 23, verse 9 through 14. All right. So this is the first fruits and how we should, how they dealt with first fruits, or how they were commanded to do the first fruits. And it says, then Elohim said to Moses, give the following instructions to the people of Yasharal, or Israel. When you enter in the land I am giving you, and you harvest its first crops, bring the priest a bundle of grain from the first cutting of your grain harvest. All right. On that day, after the Sabbath, the priest will lift it up before Yahuwah, so it may be accepted on your behalf. On the same day, you must sacrifice a 1-year-old male lamb with no defects as a burnt offering to Yahuwah. With it, you must present a grain offering consistent of 4 quarts of choice flour moist with olive oil. It will be a special gift, a pleasing aroma to Yahuwah. You must also offer 1 quart of wine as a liquid offering. Do not eat any bread or roast grain or fresh kernels on that day until you bring this offering to your Elohim. This is a permanent law for you and it must be observed from generation to generation wherever you live. Okay? So we're thinking about first fruits. And we read another passage of first fruits last week, and we went in a little bit deeper about the grain offering. Okay, that grain offering is when the priest will scoop, okay, a handful of the grain offering. Okay, it was called choice. Okay, that was burnt on the on the altar for Yahuwah. That was the pleasing, okay, offering for Yahuwah. Right. The rest of it went to the priests to eat. Right. Okay. And then on the second half, okay. So if we think about, that's what Cain was supposed to do. Okay. So first fruits, that's what Cain was supposed to do. It was supposed to be presented, okay? His best. The best was the handful, all right? It wasn't quite like that because, well, I cannot say that. They knew what they were supposed to do, okay? So on the other hand, okay, um, with the goat offering, okay, it needed to be 1 year of age, a male lamb with no defects, okay. And when we read that other passage of the lamb, the fat thereof of that lamb was given to Yahuwah. It was burnt, okay. That was for Yahuwah. That was the special aroma for that offering. So Abel did that, okay. Now the rest of it was given to the priests. Okay. All right. So that is the example of the first fruits. All right. It was the best was given, and it was given to Yah. All right. It was given to the Most High. All right. Now, first fruits. What does fruit? What are some of the ways that fruit is meaning? The meaning of fruit: actual food, whether it's bread, meat, or actual fruit. Okay, but fruit also means your product of your labor. Okay, all right. So we're going to go to, and I asked, what does the first fruits represent, or what is what is the connection of what we should be doing? Okay, or not what we should be doing just yet, because we'll get into that. But what does the first fruits represent? All right. So we're going to read a few of these here. Okay. We're going to read Matthew 13. Okay. Matthew 13, verse 1 through 9. I'm going to hop around here. 1 through 9. All right. And this particular section is called the parables of the sower. All right. Later, the same day, Yahusha left the house and sat beside the lake. A large crowd soon gathered around him, and he got into the boat. Then he sat there and taught as the people stood on the shore. Okay. He told many stories in the form of parables, such as this one. Listen, a farmer went out to plant some seeds. As he scattered them across his field, some seeds fell on a footpath, and the birds came and ate them. Other seeds fell on shallow soil with underlying rock. The seeds sprouted quickly because the soil was shallow, but the plants soon withered under the hot sun. And since they didn't have deep roots, they died. Okay. Other seeds fell among thorns that grew up and choked out the tender plants. Still, other seeds fell on fertile soil, and they produced a crop that was 30, 60, and even 100 times as much as had been planted. Everyone with ears to hear should listen and understand. Okay, so that was the parable of the seeds and where they fell. All right. And we're going to go to the next few verses. Matthew 13, verse 18 through 23. Okay. All right. And it says the parable of the sower explained. Okay. And it says, now listen to the explanation of the parable about the farmer planting seeds. The seeds that fell on the footpath represents those who hear the message about the kingdom and don't understand. Okay. The evil one comes and snatch away the seed that was planted in their hearts. Okay, so as soon as those seeds hit the ground, the bird's going to swoop down and takes those seeds. The evil swoop down and take that seed from the hearts of those. Okay, verse 20, and it says, the seeds on the rocky soil represents those who hear the message and immediately receive it with joy. They're excited. Hallelujah. They're excited. Okay. And then it says, verse 21, it says, but since they don't have deep roots, they don't last long. They fall away as soon as they have problems or persecuted for believing Yah's words. So as soon as they hear the word, they get excited. But as soon as somebody said, oh, you follow him and say something contrary, all right, they get fearful for their life. Okay. They fall off. Okay. Verse 22, it says, the seeds that fall among thorns represents those who hear Yah's words, but all too quickly, the message is crowded out by the worries of this life and the lure of wealth. So no fruit is produced. All right. So he's explaining these examples. Seeds that fall in thorny areas, they're choked out by the worries of life and the lure of wealth. So no fruit is produced. Verse 23, it says, the seeds that fell on good soil represents those who truly hear and understand Yah's words. Okay, Yah's word, and produce a harvest of 30, 60, or even 100 times as much as had been planted. Okay? So those seeds, they fell on good soil. That word stuck and they sprouted and they produced 30, 60, and some of them 100 times. All right? All right? So we're going to go on. There's another parable. We're going to go to Matthew 24:13, verse 24. All right. This is another parable that expound on what we're talking about. Okay. Trying to understand the parallels of the first fruits of then and of now. Okay. All right. And it says the parable of the weeds. Here is another story Yahushua told. The kingdom of heaven is like a farmer who plants good seeds in his field. But that night, as the workers slept, his enemy came and planted weeds among the wheat, then slipped away. When the crop began to grow and produce grain, the weeds also grew. The farmer's workers went to him and said, "Sir, the field where you planted that good seed is filled with weeds. Where did they come from?" "An enemy has done this," the farmer explained. "Should we pull out the weeds?" they asked. "No," he replied. "You'll uproot the wheat if you do. Let both grow together until the harvest. Then I will tell the harvesters to sort out the weeds, tie them into bundles and burn them, and to put the wheat in the barn." All right. So I'm going to expound on this real quick. All right. So they don't take the weeds out while they're growing up until harvest. The reason why they don't take the weeds out, because the weeds look just like the wheat until they're fully grown. So we don't know who's Yah people, who's not Yah people. But until the full harvest comes, then the harvesters will reap. Okay, so we're gonna look into that explain. We're gonna look into that explanation. Okay, the perils of the wheats explained. Okay, and it says this is Matthew 13 verse 36. Then, leaving the crowd outside, Yahushua went into the house. His disciples said, "Please explain to us the story of the weeds in the field." Yahushua replied, "The Son of Man is the farmer who plants the good seed. The field is the world, and the good seed represents the people of the kingdom. The weeds are the people who belong to the evil one." All right. The evil one who planted the weeds among the wheat is the devil. The harvest is the end of the world, and the harvesters are the angels. Just as the weeds are sorted out and burned in the fire, so it will be at the end of the world. All right. Verse 41, the Son of Man will send his angels, and they will remove from his kingdom everything that causes sin and all who do evil. All right. So this order, he's going to remove everything that causes sin and all who do evil. Okay. And the angels will throw them into the fiery furnace, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in their Father's kingdom. Everyone with ears to hear should listen and understand. So the first fruits are who? Is the believers, the true believers. We are the true believers, the first fruits. Okay, we're the product of who? Yahusha. He was the first fruit, and we are his first fruit. Okay, all right, all right. So it's one more passage that I want to read. All right, for the understanding of the parable of the beginning of understanding how we keep feasts. So we're going to go over the rest of it next week. But this is something I want to read to y'all because it really shows everyone how he really feels. Okay? Because again, I'm gonna explain it one more time. The first fruits, when we think about the grain offering, okay, they harvest all that, and all he asked for was a handful for the altar, right? All of the harvest, a handful. Okay. All right. So this one is going to be in the Sefer Bible. Okay. In the Sefer. This is in Ezra 4. Okay. We'll put it up here on the screen. Um, Ezra 4 and 7. Um, Ezra 4 and 7. So this one won't be in the regular Bible. So Ezra 4 and 7. And I really would love to read this whole one day. Read this whole the end of 6 and the entirety of 7, chapter 7. Um, but just to give you some context, okay? Ezra is going back and forth with Yahuwah, asking some very in-depth questions of life and death and afterlife before the end of the world, and a lot of good questions that we all think about and want to know. Okay. All right. But this one is going to expound on what I kind of alluded to. So it's not going to be, unless you have the Sefer, it's not going to be in that Bible. Okay. I'm going to start at 46. Okay. Fourth Ezra, chapter 7, verse 46. Okay. And it says, "But what of those for whom I prayed? For whom among the living is there that has no sin, or has not sinned? Or who among men that has not transgressed your covenant? And now I see that the world to come will bring delight to few and torment to many." Okay, this is Ezra. After Yahuwah expounded some things to him, he's seeing that only a few going to make it. Okay, so that's what he's saying right here. Okay, I'm going to read 47 again. "And now I see that the world to come," okay, he's talking about these times now, "the world to come will bring delight to few, but torment to many." Verse 48, it says, "For an evil heart has grown up in us," okay, "which has alienated us from Elohim, and has brought us unto corruption and the ways of death, and has shown us the paths of perdition, and removed us far from life. And that not just a few of us, but almost all who have been created." Okay. Verse 49, it says, "He answered me and said, Listen to me, Ezra, and I will instruct you. I will admonish you yet again. For this reason, El Elyon," okay, the Most High, El Elyon is the Most High, "has made not one world, but two. For whereas you have said that the righteous are not many, but few, while the wicked abound, hear this explanation for this. If you have just a few precious stones, will you add to them lead and clay?" I said, "Yahuwah, how could that be?" And he said to me, "Not only that, but ask the earth, and she will tell you. Defer to her, and she will declare it to you. Say to her, You produce gold and silver and brass, and also iron and lead and clay. But silver is more abundant than gold, and brass than silver, and iron than gold, and lead than iron, and clay than lead. Judge therefore which things are precious and desirable, those that are abundant, or those that are rare." I said, "Oh, Yahuwah Sabaoth," that's Yahuwah of heaven's armies, "what is plentiful is less worth, for what is more rare is more precious." Verse 59, he answers me and said, "Weigh within yourself what you have thought, for he who has what is hard to get rejoices more than he who has what is plentiful." Okay. Verse 60, "So also will be the judgment which I have promised. For I will rejoice over the few who shall be saved, because it is they who have made my glory to prevail now. And through them, my name has now been honored." Okay. And here it is. This is one that hits home for me. Verse 61, it says, "And I will not grieve over the multitudes of those who perish." This is Yah. "I will not grieve over the multitude of those who perish. For it is they who are now like a mist and are similar to a flame of smoke. They are set on fire and burn hotly and are extinguished. Okay? So, with that being said, this whole Bible is it is based around offerings. Okay? And we are the offerings. Okay? We are the sacrifice. A living sacrifice is about the harvest. It's all about the harvest. We have to be a part of that harvest. Okay? All right? And it says, if you are a part of that first fruit, you'll be laid up in the barn. If not, okay, you will be thrown into the fire because you didn't produce. Okay? And you wasn't a first fruit of the son. Okay? So that is the first half of how we should keep and how we should look at these festivals. Okay? Um, with that first part of that understanding, we have to understand in this first part of Genesis chapter 4, 1 through 8. All right. The first fruit so far, okay, of the Bible or of this family, okay, is Abel. All right. And we're going to get into the second part next week. All right. Because of the sins of the family. All right. Adam listened to his wife. Okay. All right. Eve bit the apple. All right. There was consequences. The devil deceived Eve. There's consequences. All right. And all of those consequences, something has to happen. Okay. In the first go round, okay, the first sacrifice Yahusha did was he took that lamb and he covered them. All right. All right. But it goes on because of the sins of the family. The second part, it has to be atoned. The first fruit have to be given. Okay, the first fruit have to be given, and the first fruit is the best. All right. So right now we know out of the sons who was the best. Abel. And his life was given, and he was an example. It said in the Bible, he was a perfect example. He was an example that still talks to us to this day. He was the first fruit. Okay. All right. He was the first fruit of the family. All right. He was good. He was righteous. Okay. And he did what was right. Okay. And we're going to see later on, okay, about Cain. All right. So as we expound on this, we're going to start seeing patterns of the Bible, okay, of what we read about harvesting, about fruit, and about and atonements and things of that nature. Okay. All right. Any questions? If there's no questions, I'm going to go ahead and pray. Does that all make sense? Comes together? All right. I'm going to go ahead and close out again. With that being said, we can't love our neighbors if we don't first listen and abide by Yah, okay? Because sin is going to happen and it's going to rule over us, okay? And we're going to deceive, we're going to rebel, or we may even murder, okay? So that is a part of loving thy neighbors. But first, before we can love thy neighbors, we have to first what? Love Yah. That comes first, because if we don't love Yah and listen to him, then sin is crouching at the door. Okay, so it's messages within the message, and then we have the harvest. They was doing the first fruits. Okay, one did what was righteous, the other did not. Okay, so this gives us a lesson of of what will happen if we do what's wrong and what will happen if we do what's right. Okay, so I'm gonna close out here.